So thanks very much for everyone for coming. This is a session on predictive testing and sort of sharing experiences of the predictive testing process. We've got Wouter, Hannah, and Ashleigh. They're not sitting in front of their photos, but I think you'll be able to figure out who each of them is. And my name is they didn't give us this. I don't know where the slides are. They're not there. And my name is Nayana Lahiri, so I'm a consultant in clinical genetics in London, and I have been involved with HD predictive testing and HD families for about the last 15 years or so, and chair something called the HD Predictive Testing Consortium in London, and we're sort of starting to embark on a project of thinking about updating the guidance for predictive testing. So it's really helpful to sort of hear people's stories of their predictive testing processes so that we can make things better for the next generation of people. So I am not a young person. I'm going to put my glasses on. So I'm going to get Wouter and Hannah and Ashleigh to introduce themselves. So do you want to start by telling us where do you live, a little bit about you, and what your connections are with Huntington's disease? So Wouter, do you want to go first?
Yes, of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Wouter. I come from Belgium, Antwerp, and I'm 33 years old. I come from a HD family. My father tested positive like 6 years ago. Now he's 64, and they say he has the disease since he was 55 or 50. I am HD positive myself, so I got tested 5 years ago. My sister is 4 years older than me. She is starting to have the disease since 1 year. But she doesn't want to talk about it. She says it's not true, but we're working on this. And I have one older brother, and he is HD negative. And now my sister is having children, so this is also in the family right now. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. I'm Ashleigh. I'm from London in the UK, specifically Wimbledon, if any of you are tennis fans. I am 28 and I am gene positive, but I reside in the grey area, which means I have a CAG repeat of between 36 and 39. So I might not develop HD, or I might, and if I do, the symptoms will be less severe and probably come on a bit later in my life. I've known that I had HD in my family since I was about 15. My great aunt got diagnosed. My nan had passed away a few years before, so she was never, because it was her sister, she was never able to test. And then about 3-4 years ago, I decided that I wanted to get tested. And yeah, that's how I got my result.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Remillard. I am from a small town in Manitoba, which is located in Canada. I am gene negative. I got tested about 3.5 years ago, as soon as I turned 18. And I've known about HD since I was about 7 years old. After my Auntie Pat had passed away, my parents sat down, me and my brother, and they said, hey, this is what your mom has. This is what Huntington's disease is, and you guys are at risk for it. And then ever since then, I became my mom's primary caregiver. And yeah, that's kind of just a short introduction about me.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about how HD has affected you, and also about when and why you sort of started to think about having genetic testing, and then why did you ultimately decide to test? Should we go back to the beginning?
So like 6 years ago, my parents told us that our dad had HD, and we didn't know what it was. It was the first time that we heard of it in the big family as well. And we had a meeting at the hospital with the family. They explained us a little bit about the testing process. And we decided with the 3 children, we want to test, we want to know it. Because I think that I'm always overthinking. with or without HD. So I need to know it, because if I say I'm not getting tested, I will always think like my sister is sick, so maybe I will be sick as well. So I decided, let's do it, because then I'm sure that I will have it or not. But I think that for me it doesn't change if I'm positive or negative, because my brother is negative and he's not happy as well, because he says I will be the one who need to take care of me and of my sister and more of my parents. So it's a really difficult situation. And also now I'm HD positive and I keep on overthinking. Like I see my sister who's getting worse. I need to take care of her baby. I see my father, and you will see a picture of him later. It's like looking in a mirror, because he's moving, I'm moving. Maybe I have it, maybe I don't have it. You get depressive feelings. Is this just a depression, or is it this HD? But I'm happy that we did it, or that I did it. And then it's out of the room. I can just say, hey, I'm Wouter, and I got this fucking disease.
So as I mentioned, it was actually my great aunt that was diagnosed, and I knew about that sort of from age 15. It took her quite a long time for her to get a diagnosis because her symptoms were quite mild. And I never really considered testing or even considered the possibility that it might run down my side of the family until I guess I was about 22. And I went to a family funeral, and my great aunt's son, my mum's cousin, was there, and he had also tested gene positive. And since the last time I'd seen him, he'd started developing symptoms, and they were a bit more severe than my great aunt had. And I think when it was just the one person in my family, and it was quite mild, I'd sort of made myself think, oh, well, that's just great Aunt Joyce. That's just a little bit what she's like. She's got her quirks. And then when I saw someone else in the family that was affected, who I'd known previously before they started showing symptoms, it sort of just lit something in me, and I was like, oh, this is a possibility for me. And the second I started thinking about that, I knew that I had to get tested, because I'm also a massive overthinker. And also a massive control freak. So I was like, if I'm going to be worrying about this, I need to find out so that I can, if it's not the result I want, I can direct the worry in the right way and maybe do something about it, prepare myself. So that was the reason really that I decided to get tested. But up until that point, it wasn't really on my radar. It wasn't on my mum's radar. It was nothing that we'd really considered. Obviously, me getting tested meant that in effect, my mum was also getting tested. So that was quite a difficult conversation to have with her. But she agreed that if I wanted to get tested, she was happy to sort of find out that way. Originally, when I spoke to the doctors, they weren't going to let me test because they said that my risk of being positive was too low because it was only 12.5%. They said they would test my mum, but not me. And I just sort of said, well, that's pointless, because if she tests positive, I'm going to have to test anyway. And she doesn't want to know, so you might as well test me straight away. And after a few sort of like back and forths, they eventually agreed. And I think by the time I got to that point, it took such a long time. I think it took about 6 months from my first appointment to when they actually agreed to let me have the testing before I started the genetic counselling. I was so sure, and I'd done so much research. So it was really quite easy from then on.
Like I said, I found out about Huntington's disease when I was 7 years old. So I first began attending some HD events, basically since I was in my mom's belly. We have an indie go-kart challenge fundraiser that we do in Winnipeg. So I had been attending that all my life. Didn't know, obviously, it was for Huntington's until I found out. And then I attended the Winnipeg conference in Canada, and that's where I learned a little bit more about the disease outside of, Google researching, which highly do not recommend. So from that point on, I kind of just looked at it and I said, well, I think I'd want to know, because I'm also an overthinker. So I had a huge amount of years, I guess, in a sense of like, I was super young when I found out that I was able to make that decision. That's why I knew straight away at 18, like, I want to get this done. I just want to know, I want to know what I'm dealing with so I can pre-plan for my future.
Thank you. I'm already going off-piste because I just wanted to pick up on something that all of you have said is about sort of being an overthinker and the uncertainty that comes actually with having a result if it shows that you have inherited the HD gene, and sort of, you know, about sort of age of onset and when you might develop symptoms and what's going to happen next, because actually it doesn't give you that information, does it, about sort of what's going to happen in the future. And I just wanted to sort of find out a little bit about how you manage that.
When I got tested, there was not a lot of psychological support. So the first 3 years was terrible, and we got tested. It was very short, and now I'm going to the specialist to talk about this overthinking, and I'm trying to get my future into a whole plan, or what do I want to achieve, what do I want in the near future together with my wife. And I think that this is the most important thing, to get surrounded by the right people who can assist you. And this is the most difficult thing with Huntington. Even the specialists don't know where the specialists are. And then we have a problem. So if you didn't test, then make sure that you have your assistants ready to support you. Otherwise, you will be having a depression. We don't want that.
For me, it's really been a learning curve since I got my results. So the reason I wanted to test was because I wanted to know either way, yes or no, sort of what my future could look like. I didn't know going into it that being in the grey area was a possibility. I don't think it would have changed anything, but it is something I would have liked to have been more prepared for after, because I've still got that cloud of doubt over me. I have absolutely no idea what my future is going to look like. Testing hasn't really clarified anything for me, and learning to live with that as such a control freak has been quite difficult. I know there are things that in my future that I can't plan for, and that's been really difficult for me. But it's also been, I think, quite important for me to experience, and it's taught me a lot of things personally that I can apply sort of outside of the HD world, about just being adaptable and like living life for now, as cheesy as it sounds, because that's what I have to do, because I have no idea what tomorrow will look like.
For me, before testing, I didn't really have much time to overthink or go, oh, do I want to do it? Do I not? After I decided, just because I was too busy caregiving for my mom and I had other priorities on my mind. And then getting my test result afterwards, it's definitely caused a lot of overthinking, which people don't normally think about when you hear that you tested negative, or thinking about, somebody who is testing negative. But there's a lot of doubt there. I still to this day go, am I actually negative? Did they mess up my results somehow? Did they swap it somehow? I don't know. I guess I prepared myself for a positive result, because that was something, I prepared myself for, I guess, the quote unquote worst news that you could get. Because it was easier to accept that than to accept that, other people I love were getting it and I potentially wasn't getting it, because that's the survivor's guilt piece about it. So getting that result, there's still doubt in my mind. I still haven't fully come to terms with the fact that I'm negative. But that's why I choose to speak out about it, so that people know that just because you get a result, no matter what the answer is, it doesn't mean you're going to have, all your answers that come at once. It's a process, no matter what the result is.
Thank you. So going back to my questions, what I wanted to ask you a little bit about was sort of the process of getting to having a test. So before you had a referral, if you went through genetic counselling, what sort of support or resources did you use before that? And what's your support system been like? And then if you did go through genetic counselling, what was that experience like?
In my case, there was no psychological counseling, so we just had the reunion with the family to explain about the disease, but this was just about like the scientific explanation of the disease and not about the psychological part. So normally there is the professor and a psychologist there, but she wasn't there when we got tested. And then we got the result, and they had this envelope, and she asked me, "Do you want to know it?" I said, "Yes, I want to know it." She opened the envelope, and she said, "Okay, Wouter, this is not good." And this was the end of the discussion. She closed the envelope, and she asked me, is there something else you want to know? So then we left the hospital. It was me and my best friend. And I was really, really angry, and I needed to pass the whole hospital to go to the car, and I didn't know what I had to do, and because I had the result, but where is the counseling? And I think that I live in the wealthy Belgium, but nothing is what it seems. In every country there is the same mistakes are made, and everybody is doing their best. So I get the counseling when I joined the congresses. So I found my own way, and what do I want to know? What do I need to know for myself, but also for my parents? They are well at the Belgian Association. They're doing a great job with them, but not with the young people, with us. And that's why it's so important to be here and to say that we need to activate the right people to help us.
I was really lucky in that I had a really good support network before I considered testing. I didn't utilize them as much as I should have. I was, at that time, quite a private person, and I wanted to make sure that the decision I made was mine and it wasn't influenced by anyone else. So I didn't tell any of my friends. The only people I spoke to was my partner at the time and my parents. And to be honest, I probably only spoke to my parents about it because I had to speak to my mum about it. I don't think I would have done otherwise. I think if I'd had the option, I probably would have told anyone and just made the decision and gone to it on my own. I was even reluctant to let my partner come with me when I got my results. But they were all really supportive. And if I'd let them, then I know they would have helped. And I do regret that now. But I do think for me at the time, it was right. It was what I needed to do. The genetic counselling, once I got there, it was quite tough. I've spoken to a few people who have had experiences where they said it feels like you're trying to be talked out of it. And I see where people are coming from with that. And I think, it is really tough because they have to make sure that you're ready and that you have prepared for all outcomes and that you're able to handle whatever the result is. And I did feel going into that process that I was ready. And my genetic counsellor really pushed me on it, but the more she pushed me, the more stubborn I got, and I was like, no, this is what I want. So it made me more confident that it was the right thing. When I got my result, I got called in out of the waiting room, and I sort of knew immediately. By the way she called me, and I was like, oh, this isn't good. She sat me down, and she just went, it's complicated. I was like, how can it be complicated? I thought it was, yes or no. And so she explained the situation to me, and I didn't really know how to process it then, because it wasn't something I'd prepared so much for either side, but I hadn't prepared for that middle ground. So that was difficult, and that is something about the genetic counselling process that I sort of wish I'd been more exposed to at the start. She did talk me through a lot, but she never mentioned that this was a possibility. Again, I don't think it would have changed anything, but I do think it's something that needs to be a part of that process, and you need to be prepared for all possible outcomes, even the grey area, as rare as it is.
So my process in Canada was a little interesting because I actually tested during COVID. So it's quite a different process. I had to go to my doctor first, get a referral done to see the genetic counselor. And so I got that done. About a month later, I got a call from the genetic counselor, set up a phone appointment, meeting time. When it was time to do that, I was on the phone with them. They asked me kind of like a list of questions that they have to make sure that you're ready and you're well educated enough to make that decision for yourself. And so that they know that, you know, no matter the outcome, you're prepared. And I actually almost wasn't allowed to test because I am diagnosed with major depression and suicidal ideation. And so my genetic counselor had to really debate about whether or not it was a good idea for me to, because she was scared I was going to act on something had I tested positive. So I kind of had to reassure her that no, like I have a whole bunch of support. I'm on meds. Like I'm well enough to do this, and I had to fight for that a little bit. And then as soon as that was done, she said, "You're all clear to go." I went, I got my blood drawn. It felt like the longest time ever in the waiting room, waiting to be called up to get my blood drawn. I feel like I sat there for like a whole day, even though it probably wasn't. It was probably 30 minutes at most. And then, yeah, I heard my name. I went in the room. That was probably the part I was most nervous for, was getting my blood drawn. And then after that was done, it was a waiting game of finding out, you know, when I was going to get the call of, oh, hey, your results are in. I didn't know if it was going to be soon because it was COVID, and a lot of the labs were testing for the COVID virus, obviously. And so it actually came pretty quick. I want to say it was about 3 months later. And she called, said, okay, let's set up an appointment. Again, it was a phone appointment. And then I had asked my brother, his girlfriend, Tegan, and my dad to be in the room with me. My mom, who is the one that has HD, was also aware, because you can't really hide it when you're going in a room all together during the middle of COVID of like, what are you doing? So we went in the room, and it was, I'm not going to lie, it was hard for me. And this is no fault of my brother or my dad, but I felt like I chose the wrong support system to be in that room with me. Because they were kind of, my family is very much like they joke around. That's their humor, how they cope with things. And so my brother and my dad were joking on the bed before the phone call while we were waiting for it. And I kind of just felt like, well, like this is a big moment. This is my moment. And normally I'm not a person that's like, okay, this is about me. But in that moment I was, you know, it was a little disappointing. And thankfully, Tegan was there, and she was super supportive throughout. So I got the phone call, answered it, double-checked that I was ready to hear the news. I said yes. And I was told that I had tested gene negative, and I had a CAG repeat of 17 or 18, which is normal. And I broke down and I cried. I was a puddle of like just tears right there. And my dad and my brother kind of like cheered and they high-fived each other. Tegan waited to see kind of what my reaction was. And I don't know, I guess I felt worse hearing the cheers. Because everyone goes, oh, you tested negative? Congrats. I'm so happy for you. Good for you. And it's not always that way. You don't want to hear that. Like it's hard because you know people in the community. You love people in this community. So you don't want to hear congrats on testing negative, because if you could, you would take away their positive result, make yourself positive. So it's really hard. And yeah, so hearing the cheers in that room was tough. It was really tough. And the genetic counselor on the phone just went like, how are you doing? I said, I don't know. I don't know how I'm doing. I'm crying. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't feel real because I wasn't in an office. It wasn't official. I didn't have paperwork. I felt like I was robbed of an experience. And I regretted getting tested as soon as I did, just because it was the pandemic. I wish I would have waited till afterwards, so I could sit in that room. But yeah, it was, I don't know, it was a really tough process.
Thank you. So we're going to take a break after that for a few minutes, and then we'll be back in 10 minutes time, 15 minutes time. But before we do that, Wouter, I just wanted to ask you, having listened to sort of Hannah and Ashleigh sort of going through a genetic counselling process, do you think that could you explain a little bit more about what actually happened with you during sort of the genetic counselling time? Did you have 1 appointment, 2 appointments, 3 appointments? So, you know, if you didn't have the counselling, what support and resources did you use to make the decision for yourself?
There was just this one conversation at the hospital with the family, and then maybe one before the testing, but this was it. So without any support, I made the decision to get tested. And I had a conversation with my brother like 3 weeks ago. He said, "Wouter, you could have waited," because I didn't have a girlfriend. They wanted children. And after that, I went to the neurologist to say, "Okay, I'm Wouter, I'm new here. Can you help me with some testing?" And I go there now once a year. She said, "You're always welcome to talk. Just if you're okay and you want to test, you want to do some tests, do it. Then I will be happy for another year." So now as well, I go to the hospital in Leuven once a year to the professor, also to talk about my situation. How am I doing? How are my parents doing? And these are things that I do now, but it's all things that I found out myself. And I think that's because some, like the Belgian Huntington League, I know the organizations are there, but we need to find them. Or sometimes in the first year, I didn't want any information. And still I'm receiving messages that I don't want. So I know that the organizations are there, but it's difficult for us to decide what help do I want and when do I want it. So that's difficult to do. And I know that in Belgium, a lot of things are going good testing stories and the help that is there, the counseling that is there, and maybe we had just bad luck, but you cannot have bad luck if it's about Huntington disease.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are going to take a little break, and then we will be back in 10, 15 minutes time with some more questions. People who might drift in, but I wonder whether we start back off again. And just by actually, because we found the slides, thanks Hannah, and I just thought it would be really nice to show them and also, you know, sort of put everybody's family into context. Wouter, do you want to take us through your pictures? No, you're not allowed.
So this is my family. The first picture is from my wedding 2.5 years ago. The lovely lady in the middle is my wife. You have my parents, my older brother, the bald one, so I'm quite lucky. And then you have my sister and her husband. My parents, they love to go to the sea, to walk, and I'm really I'm really proud of my parents because they're doing really good. Since 4 years, they have their help and they have good assistance. My father is totally okay with the disease. He understands. So every week when I see my dad and my mom, I say, "I'm so damn proud of you. You're doing so good as a couple." They're 40 years married, and this is Christmas with the family. We try to celebrate and to dress up very nice, as you see. My brother has two daughters now, and my sister one son. And I think this is also, my brother decided to have children when he tested negative, and they wanted to start with it immediately because he said, "We don't know how many years our father has, so now we can enjoy himself with his little with the small children," and I'm really proud. And then my wife, of course. This is the strongest person in my life right now. I think that everybody needs somebody who's there for you, and I tell her very often that I'm so sorry to bring you into this situation, but she does it. She does it every time, and if you're married, it's, how do you say, for better, for worse, also, and that's what's happening. So when I'm doing good, we're doing good. When she sees the family, she sees my father, she sees my sister. So also for partners from Huntington families, it's very difficult. But if you find the right person to share this with, then you're on the journey together.
So I haven't included most of my family. I probably should have put a picture of my dad up there as well, but he's not pretty enough to be included. So on the right, that is me and my mum. When that picture was taken, we were on holiday in Egypt, which we love. It's our second home. We've been there about 30 times. I would say the change in the relationship with my mum has been probably the most difficult, but the best thing to come out of my result. So obviously by me testing, she was essentially testing as well, and having to make that phone call to her after I'd just got my results and tell her that she was in the same situation was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I felt a lot of guilt for her, and also a lot of guilt for my dad as well, because I just told him that, you know, he's essentially going to have to go through that with her and possibly with me too. And at first, she didn't really acknowledge it. She didn't want to know that much about it. She wanted to try and support me, but she didn't want to find out about things for herself. She didn't want to tell any of our family. That made things a little bit difficult for me as well, but I didn't blame her for that. And obviously, it wasn't her decision to find out. It was my decision anyway. But as I decided to become sort of more open about it, I spoke to her and sort of asked her if it was okay if I started possibly posting things on social media, blocking certain people so they couldn't see it, if she was happy with that. And she was. And I think through me sharing my story, I've seen her open up to people and become more confident sharing hers as well. So I'm doing a charity abseil next month, and I set up a Just Giving page. And she actually shared it on her Facebook with a note saying sort of, this is something that affects me and Ashleigh, and it would mean a lot if you could sort of read our story. And I was so proud of her for doing that, and it sort of made me think that, you know, all the difficult steps I've taken in coming to terms with this and getting my story out there, like, I've seen that it's helped her, and that kind of makes it all worth it. The top picture, again, is me and my mum, and also my lovely nan, Elsie. She was my absolute best friend when I was younger. She was like the loveliest woman that you could ever meet. Wouldn't say boo to a goose. I was absolutely spoiled as a kid by her. And yeah, we were just best friends. And obviously she was also in the grey area, but none of us knew about that. She never really had any symptoms. She fell over a lot, but we thought she was just clumsy. And she, you know, when she got older, she had to lift a kettle with 2 hands, but apart from that, there was never really anything. And then on the bottom is my nan and her sister, my great aunt, Joyce. So she was the first person in the family to get diagnosed. She was an absolute character, a big fan of ABBA, which I also got from her. Loved dancing, loved singing. And yeah, so that's sort of my family history right there.
Thank you. All right, so I have a whole bunch of different kinds of pictures. I feel like I sent in like 20 because I couldn't decide. So thank you for choosing for me. So on the left here is my beautiful family. This was when I was about 14 years old when I first became my mom's primary caregiver. So that's my dad on the left. My mom, my beautiful Mama T, we call her Mama T, and everyone who loves her calls her Mama T, is right there beside me. That's me at 14, and then my brother Mackenzie, who some of you may see running around the halls. The top picture is me, my brother, and my mom when me and my brother were little. The bottom picture here is from HDYO camp because I owe a lot of my support and my education about HD and a whole lot to my second family that I do consider second family, which is the HD family I made there and the HD family I continue to make everywhere I go. And then my last picture here is the tattoo I got for Huntington's disease because I knew when I started my testing process, whether I was positive or negative, I wanted something on my body to honor everyone that I've met who has HD, who is affected by HD, who's impacted by HD. I wanted to honor my mom. I wanted to honor my grandpa. I wanted to honor my Auntie Pat. So I chose to get a tattoo before I got my test result. That way it would always be with me no matter what.
I'm so pleased we got to show those. So thanks, Hannah, for making the IT work. So back to sort of the testing process. So once you had decided that you wanted to think about testing, at any stage along the way before you got your result, did you hesitate? Did you change your mind? Did you stop things? So tell us a little bit about that.
No. No, I didn't hesitate. As I said already, for me, testing was the decision was already made. And I think if I didn't test, my life would be the same as it is now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think much the same for me. I never doubted. Once I'd made up my mind, I never doubted. I never swayed from it. And I think the same. I think if I hadn't got tested, I would have just convinced myself it was worst case scenario. And now I know, and I can deal with it. Whereas if I didn't know, I don't think I would have been able to cope with the doubt. So even though I don't have the answers, I know that I don't have the answers, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I didn't doubt during my testing process. However, there was a point growing up that I did doubt that I wanted to get tested. And that was because I didn't know my brother's test result. So I was 16, he was 18. He also got tested when he was 18 years old. And I was more worried about his result than I was my own. And so I was kind of waiting to see what his result was before I 100% decided, like, yes, I want to do this. I decided, had he tested positive, I wasn't going to get tested because I would feel the guilt of being negative, or I would feel the guilt of being positive and knowing that I potentially couldn't be the one to caregive for him. So either way, it was kind of like a double-edged sword. When I found out he was negative, though, that's when I said, okay, I'm going to get tested, because that no longer is, a concern of mine, because I definitely put others before I put myself, especially when it comes to my family. I'm a caregiver for my mom, but I'm also a caregiver for every single person in my family, every single person that I meet in the community. I love and care deeply about everyone, so.
So did you have a feeling as you were going through, or when you decided to have testing, that the test was going to go one way or the other? And then how did that play out once you got your results?
I know that my brother tested first, and he was negative. So I was thinking, I went there and thought, okay, I will be positive. This is the best thing to think. I will be positive, and it's 50% chance. But it doesn't work like that. But I try to say, okay, I go there, and it will be positive. Then it can only get better. So this is it.
Yeah, similar for me. I think I always had a feeling from the second I decided I wanted to get tested. I knew somewhere within me that I was going to be gene positive. I'd sort of, compared my nan. She had two sisters. one with the gene, one without. And I'd sort of already made my mind up before I went in, which is probably not a good thing to do. But again, it was probably also part self-preservation. I thought if I prepare for it to be positive, then, you know, I'm prepared for that. But if I'm gene negative, then I can deal with that at the time. But yeah, I did have the gut feeling. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when I was in that waiting room and they called my name, I knew from the way that they called my name as I was walking into the room, I knew it was not good news. It was just something about the tone and the look in their eye when they called my name. I was like, oh, okay, I don't really need to go in there and hear this. I know what the answer is. But yeah, I guess somewhere within me I kind of knew, but I'd always hoped that I was wrong. And it turns out I wasn't right or wrong.
Yeah, for me, similar to Wouter, where I found out my brother was negative, and we all know that it's 50-50 for each individual, but you kind of go at it and you're like, what are the odds? So I was like, okay, I'm positive. I had fully prepared for a life that was positive. I was shutting people out. I was shutting down. I just figured, you know, after going through everything with my mom, that it would be easier if I did that. So I kind of prepared myself in that way. And then I would see like every little tremor or every little thing you forget, you go, oh, it has to be Huntington's, even though that's normal. It's normal to do those things even if you don't have Huntington's disease. But you associate it right away because that's all you know, right? You're constantly on the lookout if your loved one has it because you're like, boom, that's a symptom. That's progression. So yeah, I assumed it was positive, and that's why I think it was such a shell shock to hear that I was negative. But yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about how you have sort of coped with the result over the years since you had testing, over the time since you've had testing? And have your feelings changed in any way?
Yeah, I think the first 2 years I ran away as fast as possible. So I didn't want to hear. I understood that the disease was just for me about 20 years. Like I had 42 repeats, and I understood. Okay, then it's not for now. I will be 50, and then I can live my life right now. But this was not the case. So the first 2 years I ran away as fast as possible. I went to celebrate, to go to bars, enjoy myself, and don't think about the negative things or don't talk about the negative things. But then, of course, when you see your father who's getting worse and you see your sister, then it's coming closer and they need my help. But the more that they need my help, the more that I see, oh shit, this is happening right now and not in 20 years. So I actually lied to myself saying, or I misunderstood in the hospital, it's not for now. So then I decided, okay, don't follow Dr. Google, don't listen to people that do not know anything about it. I need to find the right resource, and the right resource is International Huntington Association or people who can guide you in the process. And we can say, Wouter, trust the process, trust the science, there is hope. And I need to repeat it for myself that there is hope. My wife is saying the same. If I'm saying, unless I'm moving, I have this, Wouter, don't do it to yourself. We're doing our best we can. And if the people who are working daily with this since 20 years saying there is hope, then I have to believe in and try to be as positive as possible.
Yeah, I didn't cope very well at first. I thought I did. I had a very logical approach to things when I got my result. I actually think the first question that I asked was, do I have to declare this on my travel insurance? And that was very much the way I dealt with it. I thought, okay, problem, solution, but I didn't deal with the emotional side of it. I thought, I'm handling this really well. I haven't cried once. It's been like 6 months. But obviously what I was doing was just burying it all. I didn't talk to anyone. My partner knew. my parents knew. I told a couple of mine and my partner's friends so that they could support him. But other than that, I didn't talk to anyone about it because I thought I didn't need to. And when I did try to talk to my parents or my friends that knew, I found it quite difficult because, they were like, oh, look on the bright side. It could have been worse. And yes, they have a point, but that wasn't what I needed to hear in that moment. I needed to be sad and I needed to deal with the negative emotions. And I felt like I didn't really have a space to do that. I tried to reach out for help, and I found that no professional psychiatrist would talk to me directly about HD because they didn't understand enough about it, which is completely fair. I felt like I couldn't attend HD support groups for people who had tested positive because I had survivor's guilt in that instance, because I would see them and be like, oh, but I'm in a better situation than they are. I can't relate to them. They can't relate to me. So I don't belong there. I equally don't belong in a group with people who have tested negative. So it's like, where do I go? How do I get the support? And I sort of, at the time, found that the answer was nowhere, or at least nowhere obvious. And so I just didn't talk about it, I would say for about 2 years. And then I spoke to Jenna from HDYO. I can't remember what made me reach out to her, but I sent her an email. We had a call, and it was the first time that I told someone how I was feeling, and they didn't try to offer a solution. They didn't try to, reframe it in any way. They just understood. And it felt like such a weight had been lifted from me. I was like, oh, maybe this is what I should have been doing all along. Maybe I should have been talking to people. And then since then, I think I've learned how to cope with that better. And I think the idea that, by sharing my story and talking about it, the next person who goes through that and that testing process and is positive and in the grey zone, they're going to have someone that they can talk to, the person that I didn't have when I got my results. And I think knowing that I'm doing that has actually helped me cope a lot.
Thank you. For me, I chose to not cope as well afterwards. I chose to ignore it. It was in the back of my head, and I went, no, it's not there. I chose to continue to live my life going, maybe I'm still at risk. I knew, obviously, that my test was negative. I didn't talk to anyone in the community about it for a full year because I felt guilty for still going to events being negative. I felt like I was taking up the space of somebody else who was positive or who was at risk or who was in the gray area. I don't know, I guess I felt kind of in a limbo of like I didn't belong anymore, which isn't true, because I was still, I'm still impacted by it. My mom still has Huntington's. I'm still her caregiver. So I finally started talking about it a year afterwards at a YPAD day, which is young people affected by Huntington's disease in Canada. And it was nice to know, hearing about the topic of survivor's guilt, that I wasn't alone, because there is that huge guilt piece that comes with it. And then from then on, I kind of just started throwing myself into volunteering and doing different things in the HD community. That way I felt like, I could be helping somebody else by sharing my story. And that way, I can let other people who are negative know that they are not alone and that they still belong in this community. So I started being the social media coordinator for YPAD. And I've been the social media coordinator for the Manitoba chapter in Canada, but that's been since I was 14 years old. And I recently wrote a chapter in the book Positively Rare about the impacts and struggles of being a young caregiver. And I continue to kind of just speak at events because I feel like it's super important. And everyone should know that they're not alone. You belong in this community whether you are at risk. You belong in this community whether you're in the gray area. You belong in this community if you're positive. And you belong in this community if you're negative. You also belong in this community if you're not at risk at all and you're here supporting somebody else. Every single thing is valid. You all matter. You're all here because it impacts you in some way, and that's important to remember. So just know, whether you choose to test or not to test, you are welcome here and you are loved here, you are valued here, you belong.
Can you tell us a bit about whether or not having a test has affected any of your future plans?
Yeah, I think being positive is, it's very difficult to be 33 years old and build your future, because a lot of my friends, they start having children, which is great. I wanted children since I was 20 years old, but now everything is in perspective. What if I have symptoms in 5 years and I leave my wife alone with a child? Is this okay to do? I want to have a normal job, but I'm not looking in 10 years. I need to look in 5 years. So what is a good job? So that's the biggest difficulties to have a perspective for the future, and I'm trying to, and when it is going good, we say, okay, we're gonna do great, and we're building to this and this. But then if my head is exploding and then I see no future. And my wife says, Wouter, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And then sometimes I say, I don't know, which is not a good answer if you have maybe 40 years, because we don't know. I might be 75. But it's difficult if you see the people around you. If I see my sister, I tell her brain is leaking. This is what I see. She's not doing good. She's very sick, and she's just 4 years older than me. So what should I do? And a lot of my friends, they ask me, how is your father doing? And I say, yeah, he's okay, because they say, oh, he's still there. He's 64 and he looks good. But then I say, no, my sister is getting sick, and I might be sick. And they don't understand, and they ask questions like, do you still want children? This is not a question you ask because it's dangerous, a dangerous question, or it's a lot of difficult questions, and I cannot answer the questions. So what I want for myself in the future is just some years of stability, and I don't know, it's difficult.
I think there's so many things that before I got tested, I didn't realize that I would then have to think about going forwards. And it's not changed my life now, but it's changed how I think about my future and how I think, the decisions I make now, how they are going to affect my future. So for example, I started a new job about a year ago. And one of the main reasons I took the job was because in their maternity policy, they had a specific section on IVF. And it was something that when I read it, I was like, oh, that could be something that's going to be important for me. That's something that's relevant for me. And I am currently nowhere near the stage of having children. And it's something that I wish I didn't have to think about now or consider now. I wish I could just, think about it when the time comes to it. But there's so many things in the back of your mind that you don't expect to have to be thinking about, but all of a sudden they're there, and you have to plan for that future, even though you don't necessarily know what it looks like.
This question's really hard for me, just because I hear the responses from people who are positive and who are in the gray area, and knowing that it has affected their future. Whereas for me, there's a lot of guilt because I feel like my result has opened a lot of doors for me that I wouldn't have had opened otherwise. Like, had I tested positive, I had fully planned on never having children, because I knew what it was like to be a child caregiving for my mother, and I never wanted to put anyone through that. And so knowing now that I'm able to do those things but other people aren't is really, really tough. And I feel guilty saying, I can think about my future and I could live a long life when other people can't in this community. So yeah.
we've got a few minutes left, and so I've got 2 questions to finish up with. The first is there any advice, or what would you say to people who are thinking about having genetic testing now? And the second one is, do you have any advice, or what would you say to people who are taking people through the genetic testing process that you would have found helpful?
So I think if you are hesitating about getting tested, as I said already, be sure that you are well prepared and you got your army around you. And I think that my testing experience, the professional people, they need to cooperate more. Everybody's sitting on his chair and they're doing the things that they think that is good. But we need to see the human side of hospitals, of healthcare, because now in a lot of countries it's not on point, and we are the victims of this. It's not going well. If I break my leg, they can make mistakes, but if it's about rare diseases, then I get really angry. So that is what I want. I want more psychological support during the testing process, before and after the process, and then it might get better.
Yeah, I think on the sort of hospital side, I would say similar. I think more care is needed after. So I was, fine through the actual testing process, and then afterwards it was kind of like, okay, you're on your own now. Go, we're done. And I have yearly checkups, but it's 10 minutes to discuss how I've been feeling, which is not, nowhere near enough. I had some grief therapy, which did help, but again, it wasn't specific to HD, so it didn't address really what I needed to address. So I think getting specific therapy would be really helpful. Advice for anyone considering testing: just either talk to people or don't talk to people, but you need to do what's best for you. For me, I needed to make that decision on my own, because I really care what other people think, and I would have been influenced, I think, by my partner, by my parents, by what they thought. So for me, making that decision on my own and then talking to them about it, which was the bit that I didn't do, that was best for me. But you need to figure out what is best for you, whether that's getting other people to help make that decision and getting other people's opinions on it, or whether you make it yourself. But talk to people, either way. It doesn't matter at what stage of the journey you talk to people, but make sure you're sharing how you're feeling, whether that's friends, family members, a genetic counsellor, or a member of this community. There will be someone there who will listen to you and will give you whatever you need, whether that's advice, comfort. Just don't keep it all bottled up.
I think for the professional side of things, I would suggest, just keep doing what you're doing. Come, listen to us, hear us, talk to us, because as much as you're the professional, we're the expert in this scenario. And so just continuing to learn from our experiences to make it better for the experiences coming after is super helpful. And as for advice for anyone, if you're choosing to get tested, make sure you have the right support network. Really, really think about who you want there in that moment. Think about, if you take this person, are you going to have to support them, or are they going to support you? And also, you don't have to get tested. It's your choice whether or not you want to get tested. And even though you're sitting in this room listening to our testing stories, it doesn't mean you need to go do it. If what you choose to do is never get tested, that's also completely valid. So.
Thank you. I think that was a perfect end, and that's exactly right. I think, what we've learned from the HD community is that everyone has their own path, everyone has their own journey, everyone is affected in a different way, and everyone has a different decision that they can make that is the right decision for them. And so, you know, I think that if you're thinking about testing, go and speak to somebody who knows something about Huntington's disease in order to have those discussions and try and weigh up the pros and cons for you. And I totally hear the bit about psychological support afterwards, and I think, you know, that's something that we really need, and during, and that's something that we really need to work on. So I just wanted to say a really big thank you, and I hope you'll join me in saying a big thank you to Wouter and Ashleigh and Hannah for sharing their stories today. And I think that there is a break. I don't know what there is now. There might be a break. There's a break. There's a break. Thanks, guys. Thank you.